In this video, you will learn one crucial concept in boxing, which is going to give you a lot more power in your punch. I'm Ollie, an amateur boxer with over 30 fights, and I've coached over 100 beginner boxers online. And I oftentimes see them using this boxing on ice mistake. Without learning what I'm about to teach you, you will have less power in your punch, you'll be off balance, and you'll perform worse in the ring. So what do I mean by boxing on ice? Well, if you imagined being on an ice rink and trying to box, your feet would be sliding all over the place like this. And this is something that I see very common in beginner boxers. When they're throwing punches, their feet tend to move like this. So let's say they're throwing a right hand, their toe on their lead foot might come to the side, their heel might come in, or going this way onto their back heel like this when they're throwing a lead hook. They'll be moving around like this as if they were boxing on ice because they can't grip the ground properly with their feet. So what is wrong with boxing on ice? Well, first of all, it's very easy to fall off balance. Falling off balance comes from we differ from this foot position, this stance, where my front foot is gripping the ground fully. My front foot is basically completely on the ground. I'm not on the sides of my feet like this, or I'm not moving on the heel. And my back heel is up off the ground, and I'm using the ball of my back foot to stay stable. When I'm in this position, this is where I'm on balance. When I differ from this position is where I will come off balance, i.e. that center of gravity moves outside of my stance. This is what we want to stay away from. A good analogy for this would be, say I was actually boxing on ice and I held my hand out there. If you just started pushing my hand, I'd probably just fall over. That's because my feet aren't planted in the ground. If you imagine I was like stuck in mud, then you could push my hand and it would be easy to stay solid. I've got a lot more resistance behind my shot, okay? Same for my right hand or any punch. So this is what gripping the ground looks like. I'm going to have the ball of my back foot planted into the ground, like we're almost pressing it into the ground. I've got a slight bend in my knees and my whole front foot is touching the ground, okay? I'm not on the sides of my feet, not my heels, I'm not on the ball of my foot. Okay, from here, I'm nice and stable. We can even push a little bit forward in our back foot and a little bit back in our front foot, and that sort of cancels me out and I'm nice and solid in this position here. So this is what being stuck in the mud or being planted looks like. A way to sort of comprehend how to grip the ground with your feet is like actually think about trying to do it. Like if you're gripping the ground with your hand, you're going to try and like do that, right? Just do that with your toes. You're a little bit more solid in the ground. Feels like it to me. From this position, I have resistance behind my punches. I'm going to explain exactly, well, I'm going to go into detail what that means after this. But first of all, just know that when I differ from this, i.e. I come over here like this or like that, I don't have that resistance behind my punch. For example, when I throw a lead hook, if I'm moving like this or I'm moving off my back foot, there's less resistance behind my shot. When I'm nice and stable and fixed in the ground, there's more of a resistance behind this punch, i.e. I can transfer my body weight better into my knuckles and it provides more resistance against the target. So why do we want to be in this planted position when we're punching? Well, I touched on earlier that it provides more resistance, but how does it do that exactly? So there's something called the power line, right? And the power line starts from the feet. So when I throw a right hand or a cross, there's a line that travels from my knuckles all the way down to my back foot. You can probably see it lines up here. Now this line provides better resistance, right? Because imagine if I was off the line, I didn't fully rotate, all that resistance would be in the front of my shoulder, right? But when I fully rotate out like this, all that resistance goes down into my back leg. And because my back leg is stable and I'm not boxing on ice, I'm nice and solid here and I have that resistance. Someone could push my knuckle like this and I wouldn't go back anywhere because I can resist that force they're putting on me. Same as if I'm going with my lead hook. If that front foot's nice and stable, then I can resist that force they're pushing against my hand with. Therefore, it has more resistance and it can carry more of my body weight through the punch. So planting your feet is great for punching, but that doesn't mean that we should always be planted in the ground. We need to move around the ring and then plant our feet quickly, then get our shots off, then move around again. The more effectively you can do that sequence, the more effective of a boxer you'll be. You need to be able to get into that position quickly to get your shots off before moving your feet, getting out of range. If I was just still planted like this, then it'd be easy for someone to box me because they could just come in and out of range, just throw their shots and be out of range before I can catch them or throw mine. All right. However, we can sort of combine this plantedness with the footwork. Okay. So a lot of people, they're like super light on their feet. They're point scorers. They don't have much power behind them. So there's a sort of, what would you rather have? Would you rather be a point scorer? Would you rather be able to whack? I'd much rather be able to whack because that's way cooler. So you want to kind of optimize your footwork for this. And that's something that the pros do. They're a little bit more planted as they move around the ring. So to do this, your knees are a little bit more bent and you just stay in that planted position where you're on the ball of your back foot and the whole of your front foot. And you just sort of step around the ring like this. Close them down. This is what Art Better Beer does really well. He's just walking them down and he's always in that planted position, ready to throw them big, high resistance punches, okay, which scores him the knockout. Or what you could do is you could like dance around the ring, fucking just do that shit that, you know, is pretty common in amateur boxing. Like obviously it works, but it's like, it's just not that cool. Of course, we've just scratched the surface of how you can blend that plantedness with that resistance in your power punches with footwork and moving around the ring effectively. But if you want to go deeper with this is something I go into much further in my private coaching community. I'll leave the link in the description or go to hybridwarriorelite.com. Here's a couple tips of how you can further implement this gripping the ground with your feet, because I know it sounds cool, but it's kind of hard to actually do. One thing I think is super useful is making sure this lead knee stays a little bit more still. Obviously, it's not going to be still all the time, but the more it like bends in, the more you lose that solid stability in your foot. So if I bend my knee in here, obviously I'm going onto the side of my foot. Or if it's coming out here, I'm going onto the side of my foot, taken away from that resistance. Whereas if it's nice and solid and still, we don't really lose any of that resistance. We keep it the same.